Bentley Brown, thank you so much for being here today. Your lecture was very interesting. You told us that you moved to Chad when you were 11. Can you tell us something about the reason and...
Yeah, so my parents actually, they're a physician and engineer, and we moved to Chad when they worked with an NGO in a relatively rural place, like on the edge of the desert, where my father ran mobile medical clinics.
Okay.
But when I was 11, I didn't really care why we were going as much as just wanting to fit in and make friends
Okay.
and play basketball.
And your first movie was made in Chad?
And I wanted to ask you too, so being here at the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy in Berlin, what would be your definition of cultural diplomacy? And also, how do you see, you said an issue that you like to, that you've dealt with a lot in the past is migration. How do you see that playing into cultural diplomacy? Do you see it as essential for effective cultural diplomacy, or what are your views on that?
Cool. I've actually worked a little bit in the field of cultural diplomacy. So before, I made films first growing up, very amateur, editing on a VCR and everything with friends. And then I came back to the United States for university and wound up working with a couple organizations after that in the field of encouraging international relations and cooperation between countries. I chose to come back to filmmaking, however, because I think that eventually, I think filmmaking has more potential to bring people together, that it's its own sort of cultural diplomacy of sorts. And I think there's a lot of room for collaboration, too, between governments and private groups or artistic groups as well. In terms of migration, migration it's a word that means a lot of different things depending on where you are, but it can also be a word that a lot of people can relate to in a similar way across the world. So people have always been moving, right? They've always been moving around, they've always been migrating. No matter what your view of how the world came into existence, it's pretty apparent that people have been moving from one place to another. I think that's a trend that, of course, it's not a trend, it continues all the time. And I think it would be great if governments could deal with migration in as comfortable a way as possible, because it's a reality, it's something that's going to be increasing more and more in the coming centuries for sure. So, yeah.
Maybe one question kind of related to that. In your lecture also you talked about how moving between different countries shapes your identity and maybe how you perceive yourself, but maybe also how you're perceived by others. I was just curious how you experienced that maybe, because you grew up in Chad, but you went back to America at some point. How did it shape your identity, and maybe also how is it maybe still present in your everyday life?
Yeah, that's a really good parallel. So even though I made this film Paisa Goes West about a family moving from Sudan to America, I had a sort of similar experience coming from America to Chad as a child. So some of the things I wanted to express through the main character, Faisal, in this film were things that I myself had felt or experienced. Not speaking a language, wanting to learn that language, wanting to fit in. So I think there's a lot of commonalities there. I kind of myself fell into a trap when I first moved back to the United States, because I was a bit negative towards the United States. I took pride in one of these national identities over another. But what I'd like to do over time, and what I think that we as our generation can do in the future, is try to be just more comfortable with who we are, no matter where we come from. It's very normal to grow up, even within one country, to grow up in one place and go to another, or to move even from one part of a city to another and have a different lifestyle and a different culture. And so at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter as much what your nationality or nationalities are, in as much as just those are the experiences that have shaped you as an individual.
Yeah. And do you still, is it very present in your everyday life? Like, if people ask you, where are you from, what would be your answer? What do you say?
That's a great question. I'll do it right now. I'm coming from, insert, Washington. I was born in the U.S. and I grew up in Chad.
Okay.
And I try to stay away from saying I'm American and I'm Chadian or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
It's stupid.
And moving between countries is one of the main themes of all your movies, isn't it? Like finding your way, like going to another country to find your fortune, or...
That's a great question. It's a core topic that I'm very passionate about, but it's not the subject of all of the movies. Although I would say that kind of being yourself, no matter what your circumstances, and having that perseverance, you know, to that desire to just to trudge through and continue and make of life what you can, no matter where you are, is an important theme that's in all of the films so far.
And what made you decide to go back to the United States?
So I was working in the realm of political monitoring during some really important political processes in Sudan after the signing of the peace agreement in 2005. So there was this elections, and there was what they call a popular consultation, where citizens were polled of their views in a certain regional area of particular sort of conflict sensitivity. I worked there, and during that time, I was craving to go back and make a film, no matter how. And one of the ideas that I had was to go back to America and then work with Sudanese actors in America on a film that wasn't unlike a documentary, which documentaries have a sort of truth claim. You know, it's like we're looking into real life and we're showing you real life and the real facts. I think narrative fiction offers a bit of freedom to explore real life, but without being tied down to, did you represent this person exactly as they are in reality or not? So there's some freedom.
How was your last film received by the local people in Sudan?
So, great question. It actually just screened in Sudan for the first time at the first evening of the Sudan Independent Film Festival, the first edition ever in Khartoum. And so far, I think people enjoyed, like I said before, apart from the film's technical qualities and particular story. I think it's fun to see a film in a language that you speak, and if you haven't seen many films in that language before.
Yeah. And is it a journey that a lot of people from Sudan make? Like, they recognize it?
So, I would say a lot of people in Sudan have aspirations to leave Sudan, maybe to come back, and that Sudanese overall are a relatively mobile people, that they have moved to a lot of countries for different reasons throughout the last several decades. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today and for the speech you gave. It was really great, and it's really good to hear your insight
flattering.
on these things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
thank
very
you.
impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Thank
I
you so much.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Good luck with everything.
I appreciate it.
Nice to
Yeah.
meet you. Thank you.
Thanks.